Hey, everybody, and welcome to episode 90 of the Navigating Now virtual roundtable series. I am Anthony Ewing, founder here at Thoughttium, and I am joined by one of our new perennial guests, Kevin Adler, the founder of the Altitude Group. Today, we're going to be talking all about the intersection of personal and professional development. This is one of my absolute favorite topics. And I'm so excited to know that it has made its way into not only the boardrooms, but the conference rooms and the cubes of, and the homes behind Zoom screens of really every working professional today. How can we continue to explore the intersection of the way that we grow and develop ourselves and the way that we grow and develop as professionals? Do those have to be the same? What is that intersection, and how can we really stand at that intersection and understand the benefit of what we call whole self coaching? And if we have ever had a guest here that knows whole self coaching, not only from his practitionership, but also from his story, it's definitely Kevin Adler. So Kevin, I want to thank you for joining today, and welcome back to the roundtable.
It's my great pleasure to be here, and I'm a fan of this program. Just to indicate that I just got the notification on my watch as a subscriber that a new episode is starting. So it's a very meta moment for me.
I love that. And so you've got the watch on one hand and the Whoop on the other. Like all things are tracking right now. I love that. We'll touch on that in a bit. But as I mentioned, today is about personal and professional development. We had you on the show. Gosh, it was almost a year ago, Kevin. And we had such a great conversation about the way that you were leading through change and the way that you were supporting leaders through change. And that was really the collective dialogue that we've had over the course of the last really 18 to 24 months. What I get so excited about having leaders like yourself and community leaders like yourself back at the table now, almost 26, 28 months into this pandemic, is to really do a little bit of a check on how are you, and where are you at, and how have the last 2 years impacted your career? How has the dialogue changed between you and your clients? And we're going to get into all of that here in just a moment. We're here with Kevin Adler, the founder of Altitude Group. We're talking about personal and professional development, and I will also just welcome our community into the discussion today. We go live every Thursday afternoon at 3 o'clock Central. We want to particularly thank and welcome our LinkedIn community. We're very lucky to have LinkedIn Live abilities to go live to our LinkedIn community of over 10,000 viewers on a week-to-week basis. And we just appreciate everyone who stops by, who maybe chimes in passively or gets a little bit of inspiration, from us and the team for, demonstrating our ability to kind of put our perspective out there on a week-to-week basis. That is the feedback that we get, no matter the topic, is that you all really do appreciate us showing up. And that's what we're really encouraging everybody to do as leaders and as working professionals. So let's get into the discussion. Kevin, again, we had you on the show a while back, and I know a lot has happened for you personally and professionally. Tell us what you've been up to. And I want to know a little bit more about, the evolution of the Altitude Group, where you're at today, and also the evolution of your mountaineering. Because I know that you're, as an executive coach and as a leader and as a founder of a company, you draw on your passion for climbing mountains in some pretty interesting ways. So bring us up to speed.
Yeah, I do indeed draw on a daily basis on what happens in my journey in real time and pull those learnings and observations into my work that I'm so lucky to do as a coach. And one of the things I like to say is, if we operate on the premise that I'm a good coach, which I'm going to allow myself for just a minute, I like to say I'm not a good coach because I have it all figured out and I have all the answers. I'm a good coach because I am on my own journey of self-discovery and growth and learning on a daily basis. And I am able to capture those learnings and bring them into the work in real time. So the evolution of the business and the evolution of me and the spirit of whole person coaching and sort of whole human mentality are seamlessly integrated, right? I have had some great wins professionally and some coming up shorts professionally over the past couple of years, and over the past year, certainly some things that I got very excited about, some goals that I set for myself professionally that I came up a little short on, and there's some really powerful lessons from that I took away that I'm so grateful for. On the mountaineering side, to parallel that, I recently returned a couple of months ago from my second attempt on one of the 7 summits. The 7 summits are the highest peak on each of the 7 continents. And it's a very small elite club to belong to have conquered, I don't believe in the word conquered, by the way, when it comes to mountaineering, to have achieved the 7 summits. I've made my way through a couple of them. The goal is to do all of them. And this February, I had my second attempt on a mountain called Aconcagua, which is a big, beautiful, nasty pile of dirt and rocks in South America. It's the highest peak in the world outside the Himalayas. It tops out at roughly 23,000 feet. I came up short on it in 2020, actually right before the world shut down. I was lucky enough to be able to go back in February of this year, and I had absolutely worked my tail off to prepare and address any inefficiencies in my training and my mindset that may have contributed to me not reaching the summit on my first attempt. And lo and behold, 1,000 feet from the summit, I got turned around by our guides for pace and the overall state of my safety and physical condition. And it was a heartbreaking, truly heartbreaking falling short of a goal. And I would tell you that one of the big things, and I have shed plenty of tears, I sat on the side of that mountain and cried in the most primal way. I have cried multiple times in telling the story in detail of that moment in time. Emotions right there. But I can tell you that one of the things that I have learned from everything that I have accomplished and everything that I maybe came up a little short on relative to goals that I set for myself is to ground myself very firmly in the idea of process, not outcome. And it has been one of the most powerful lessons that I have taken away from my own journey over the past year plus. When I set my 2022 goals, which are on a little sticky note on my laptop, and I look at them now, what I've done is I've re-engineered how I think about goal setting. And I have 2 separate sort of verticals that I think about. I think about outcome-driven goals, because it's okay to have outcome-driven goals. And then I think about effort-driven goals, right? And an outcome-driven goal, the way I delineate is an outcome-driven goal is something that you can't necessarily unilaterally control the outcome of, right? I set a revenue goal for the altitude group for 2022. That number is contingent upon other people making the decision to hire me and the altitude group to do the work that I'm so lucky to get to do. I don't control the outcome of those decisions. I have 100% control over the integrity of the process that I apply to in service of that goal and how I show up every single day in support of that goal, but I can't control the outcome. And so it's been a really, really powerful lesson. And I think as we were talking about a couple of minutes ago, sometimes I need to be reminded of that lesson by my coach or the universe in its own, sometimes less than kind way. But it's been a really powerful lesson, the idea of process, not outcome. So
I love that. You know, the foundation of process, not outcome is such an amazing foundation. One of which I know that you start your coaching relationships with. And it reminds me of, you know, the leadership that you have exuded to me as I've gotten to know you as a leader and to our team. And that is one of what we call practitionership. And, you know, that is, again, by definition, and we love this term by definition, a practitioner is someone who treats their work like an art form or a craft. And what's behind that is someone who maybe is not as intent on the final outcome as much as they love the process. And so I always say that in a previous life, you know, I could have been a 16th century sculptor who spent his entire life on a single piece of granite, not necessarily worried about the outcome as much as just knowing that granite is there every day to chip away at. And that mentality is not for everybody, right?
Yeah, I would humbly suggest to you that it is for everybody, because what you miss when you focus solely on the outcome, or to borrow from my other world, the summit, is the beauty of the journey, right? And it sounds very Hallmark cardy, it sounds very cliche, but it nothing could be more true. I was in Argentina on this climb for 3 weeks, I think, and what a beautiful experience, start to finish. Even tragically beautiful on summit day for me and coming up short. But man, if I viewed that trip as a failure because I didn't stand on top of that mountain, and by the way, rest assured, I will go back and I will finish that unfinished business. There is zero question in my mind about that. But if I characterize that entire experience as a failure because I didn't stand on the summit, boy, would that be short-sighted of me. And boy, would I be missing an opportunity to connect to all the beauty of everything that happened along the way and all the growth and the learnings that come from that. Yeah. So I want that for everybody. And, you know, it's available. It is like everything else in our lives and our work, a choice.
Yeah, I love that. And I just love how authentically you speak to these concepts because you live them as a coach. And, you know, that brings us to, I really want to dive right into today's, you know, topic, and that is the intersection of personal and professional development. So I almost want to attack this through two angles. And the first angle that I want to come at it with is how Kevin has the coaching relationship changed over the course of, you know, the last couple of years. And that could be through the relationships that you have, or even the relationship you have with your coach, what you've seen out in the marketplace. How has that relationship changed?
Sure. I think slowly and importantly and fundamentally needed, corporate America and smart leaders are starting to understand that they have to recognize that their company is a collection of whole human beings, layered human beings that make the work happen. And we don't leave parts of ourselves at home when we show up for work. We show up as the whole nuanced, layered humans that we are, right? And so the degree to which a humanistic leader, which is something I'm very passionate about, the idea of humanistic leadership and creating humanistic cultures, the degree to which a humanistic leader views his employee population that he serves, by the way, he or she, pardon me, because that's the other layer of this, is servant leadership. The degree to which a smart leader views their team as a collection of whole human beings, recognizes them as such, and treats them as such, is the degree to which a company differentiates between, and this is new language for me, and I think it's super powerful language, it's the difference between a high performance organization and a healthy high performance organization. One is sustainable, one is not. And I think there is a fundamental paradigm shift that needs to happen, and maybe in some companies is starting to happen, between understanding the difference between high performance and healthy high performance. And that connects directly back to the degree to which those companies have humanistic leadership and a humanistic culture. And
in order to create the space for this healthy high performance, what new attributes, what new spaces do we need to create as leaders? Because I know it's easy to say healthy high performance, but what's behind that is some real shifting that needs to happen in the way that we create the space for our employees. Like what new spaces do we have to create in the corporate environment that we might not have had to before? Psychological safety, additional training. What might help us create more of a healthy?
Yeah, I'm going to give you a little bit of a broad philosophical answer. I think you're maybe looking for some very tactical stuff there, and certainly there are tactical things, right? But I think if we start with the conceptual, the tactical stuff sort of becomes self-evident, and that is, at the risk of being repetitive, it starts with just understanding that you have a collection of whole human beings that work for you, and what are their needs as human beings. You know, back in my previous life as a marketer, and it would be preposterous to suggest that I invented this perspective, but I certainly anchored my work in it. The idea that as a brand, if you take a needs and wants-based approach to your relationship with your consumers, then you are no longer a commodity and you're no longer selling them something. You are developing a relationship with them and meeting them where they are and adding value to their lives and meeting their needs, right? And the idea applies to this conversation and this topic. It's if you understand that, you know, as whole humans, what are the other things beyond pressure to get the job done that are pulling on people? I coached a brilliant leader this morning who is a recent empty nester. And she is um, raw with emotion over the fact that her kids no longer live at home, right? And she misses them. And she was incredibly powerfully vulnerable on the phone with me this morning and crying and then apologetic for it. And I said, let's make an agreement right now that you will never apologize for showing up as the whole human being that you are in our work together and in your work at work, right? Because that's the most powerful version of who you are. And we're going to show up that way as the best version of ourselves and acknowledge all of the things that make us who we are and all the things that are going on in our lives. And so if as a leader, you are tuned into your team enough on a human level to know what's happening with them as human beings, it doesn't mean the work doesn't get done. It means the work gets done by people who feel more supported and therefore more engaged and motivated to do the work. I have a very run-on sentence that summarizes my mission as a coach, and it's I support executives to become values-connected, heart-centered, people-focused leaders. That's the first half, who create cultures of inspired, engaged, mission-aligned employees. It's a grammatical crime, but it's every word in there matters, right? Because there's a massive difference between being an executive and being a leader. And a big part of that is the degree to which you approach your role as a leader from a humanistic perspective. And from the employee perspective, I know we wanted to talk about what employees need. From an employee perspective, everybody, it's a fundamental human need to want to feel seen, heard, understood, valued, appreciated, recognized, right? And part of that is, hey, I'm a whole human. I am a recent empty nester, and I am so devastatingly sad about the fact that my kids don't live with me anymore. I need you to at least acknowledge that and see that and know that I'm struggling with that as I try and bring my best self to this work. So I'm giving you a very long and very broad and very conceptual answer to your question. But the idea is exactly that. If we can create a framework within which human beings do their work, where they are recognized first as human beings, right? Human beings before they are recognized as human doers. That, I think, is the essence of what we're talking about.
I love that. Human being over human doer. And that might be the difference between high performance and healthy high performance.
Absolutely.
I know that, a lot of our client organizations are really focusing on employee development, employee growth. The total population is also reflecting that back to us. So, we're starting to see some major shifts in priorities for organizations and supporting personal, professional growth and development within organizations. We're clearly seeing people take charge of their career in new ways over the last few years. And we're also seeing leaders and organizations get a lot more creative with the way that they support their people. And in some cases, we've seen some real creativity and agency for employers allowing their employees to self-identify opportunities to grow and learn and even find a coach. And so that leads me maybe to my next question. For those of us out there who are thinking about getting some coaching, I think it might be valuable, Kevin, to help them understand maybe what are some of the things they should be thinking about when approaching a coaching relationship, and maybe share a couple of the questions that you might ask in kind of that discovery call, if you will, that helps kind of align your services with the needs of your coachees.
Yeah, absolutely. And what a great example of humanistic leadership it is that there are organizations that are starting to recognize the holistic nature of the support their people need and providing coaching as a resource. I'm so privileged to be able to do this work, and it's such a thrill for me when I see companies recognizing the importance of providing that resource.
Yeah, and I don't want to interject, but I will, because I think this is really important. We're seeing more organizations seek external coaches, which I think is such a healthy indicator of the creativity that's happening within organizations. Because you and I both know, as external consultants and coaches, how difficult sometimes it is to get into these organizations and provide services, because they're so nailed down with either their methodology or maybe more directly tied to leaning on their HR team to support this type of growth and development. And now that the demand has gone up, and maybe the type of demand has gone up, coaches like yourself are being brought into organizations in some really creative ways. And I didn't want to interject, but I did want to deposit that is what we're seeing out there, which is why people should seek for the right coach for them and not necessarily the coach that is provided to them.
100%. And the the cool part from my perspective and the experience that I'm having and seeing out there is organizations understanding that when they bring a coach in for work that is grounded in what is ultimately leadership effectiveness, that the focus is not this narrow, right? That it is whole human coaching.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really important evolution of this work. Nobody needs me to coach them through the top 10 things that make an effective leader. You can read an article in Harvard Business Review, you can read a book, and it's not story time. You don't need me to read you skills-based training, right? And I think that's the essence of this. There's a massive difference between training and coaching, right? Training is skills. Coaching is much more holistic than that, right? And coaching is about mindset and behavior and perspective. And certainly skills flow out of that, right? But the notion that organizations are providing coaching support, engaging third parties like us for that work, and allowing those relationships to be organic and inclusive in terms of what gets discussed. The fact that I can take a very senior level leader and help her with the pain she is feeling over her kids no longer living at home, right? And how that enables and empowers her to show up as the best version of herself at work. And I think that what people are starting to realize is this traditionally viewed soft stuff has not a dotted line, but a direct line to business performance. I think that's a huge eye-opener for a lot of companies on how they look at coaching. It's not the fluffy stuff. It enables business performance. And again, it goes back to healthy high performance and sustainable performance versus straight numbers-driven performance. In terms of how I have those conversations with folks on the very, very front end, we talk about process versus outcome. That being said, I ask folks, what does success look like for you in this relationship? What do you want out of a coaching relationship? How does your life look different 12 sessions from now than it does today? What is the change that you want to see? And we, to some degree, reverse engineer from there. And at the same time, we show up in a way that allows us to be organically present with whatever the topic is of the day. Certainly in corporate work, there are some KPIs and there are some sponsor-driven agenda elements, right? A leader has to net out a better leader, right? We do take, again, at the risk of overusing this phrase, a very whole human inclusive approach to the work. And so it's, I think that's the big evolution, is that companies are starting to understand that is what the best version of this work looks like.
Yeah, I love that. You mentioned something about how, what once was known as kind of the soft stuff is being not only recognized, but prioritized in organizations. And we're seeing that as well, too. We work with organizations on a lot of commercial learning and development initiatives, sales training initiatives, right? And we're having more and more conversations with our clients who are coming to us asking for selling methodology or selling skills training. And we're recommending that they start with a foundation of behavioral skills that support more of a holistic approach to service orientation, agility, resilience. And some of those kind of initial conversations might be a little tricky, because you do get a little bit of pushback of like, well, this is the soft stuff. Like where are the outcomes here? But when you can show that when you introduce these behavioral skills, these required skills, these universal skills, people grab onto them like you would not believe. They start applying them to their personal life. They start applying them to their career path. And by the way, they also start applying them to the way that they approach their customer relationships. And so you get this kind of holistic approach to developing something as tactical as selling skills. And we've just had some incredible outcomes with those behavioral skills, those universal skills, as the foundation of something as technical and as process oriented as selling skills. And I think we're starting to see the same thing in coaching. Coaching also has a model, especially in some of our more, within our traditional organizations. And to your point, they want to see very specific outcomes. But today, more than ever, we're putting more stock in outcomes like, wow, I can really apply this to what's going on with me, both professionally and personally. Or, wow, I can take this skill and I can leverage it in another position within the organization, because we know internal mobility right now is super, super important. And it's also a way that we can retain our employees. And so it's interesting how the outcome has also changed, I think, for leaders as they think about investments in their people. They're not necessarily thinking about what is the ROI within this specific role, but they're almost taking a whole person perspective to the ROI on an investment, like an investment in something like training or coaching.
I couldn't agree more, and I'll share a couple of directly related thoughts. Number one, I think what we are starting to see, there are some modalities of coaching for certain need states that are more formulaic than others. The type of work that I do, I am seeing people start to recognize that they need to step back from the formulaic perspective on how this work gets delivered, right? So I think that's really important to note and allow for that humanness in the work, which is crazy to even say allow for the humanness in the work, because it is fundamentally human work at its best.
How do you not allow? Yeah, exactly.
How do you not, right? The notion of stuff we learn in leadership effectiveness coaching that we apply holistically in our lives. Listen, it's a lot of fun when the cash register rings, when I deposit a check. Those are fun days. The single most rewarding thing that has happened to me over the past 12 months as an executive coach is on a Saturday night at 10 p.m., I received a text from a very senior leader that I coach at a $34 billion company who said, I am on vacation with my family, and I just finished sitting around a fire pit with my teenage daughter, and for the first time ever, I really, really listened to what she was telling me and what she needs from me, as opposed to telling her what she needs. And that is a direct result of our work on how I can improve how I listen to my team. And that means more to me than any check I will ever deposit. And that is a brilliant example to me. I was so thrilled for this leader in that moment, that he was able to take some of the things that we are working on in corporate sponsored coaching that is specifically framed around leadership effectiveness and making him a more effective leader at work, and apply those ideas holistically in other aspects of his life. And it just doesn't get any better.
I love that. Yeah. And as a coach, I mean, I can absolutely relate to those stories where the impact is real. It might be slight, it might be small, but it's real. I want to maybe round out with another question, just in terms of, how we should approach, coaching, both designing for a great coaching experience and potentially seeking coaching. I want to acknowledge that there is a lot of, off the shelf content that is available out there today. There are digital masters classes. There's millions of hours of content for free on YouTube. There are even, digital coaching platforms out there, AI powered, that provide a little bit of a custom approach to delivering some of this content in ways that support specific capabilities. As our access to information grows and these channels become more available to more people, Kevin, what in your perspective is the role of digital coaching content, in-person content, and kind of the mix of the two?
I'm very clearly biased on this topic, but I think it informs the work, right? I think that if you are a growth-minded individual, one of my biggest challenges on a daily basis is the amount of content that I'm interested in consuming relative to my bandwidth to consume that content, because there's no such thing as too much learning for me, and there's no such thing as too much growth for me. Yeah. I think it informs the work. It is not the work, right? Yeah. Tell a YouTube video that you have tears running down your face because your kids no longer live at home. Tell a digitally delivered masterclass that you are struggling in your relationship with your spouse. See what kind of human response you get. it's not there. It's not human work. It informs the work. You can learn a ton from any of the content that's out there. And there's a lot of great, brilliant stuff out there. I spend a percentage of each day consuming growth-minded content, and it makes me smarter, and it informs the work I do on myself. It informs the conversations that I have with my girlfriend about our relationship and how we can grow as a couple together and as partners. It is not the work. It informs the work. That's the difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. And again, I'll draw parallels to how we design great learning experiences. We absolutely believe that the live learning experience is one of the most fundamental and necessary ways to distill information for all types of learners. And we know that everybody learns in different ways. We also appreciate the fact that people have now more access to content than ever. So we almost expect our learners to show up a little bit more informed than usual, and we welcome that. We also acknowledge that in the learning space, your ability to go and seek some of that information prior to coming into a training workshop or an opportunity to grow your skills is also a way of you kind of enrolling in the process, if you will. And I know that shows up a little bit in our coaching relationships too, but man, I don't ever see the coaching relationship going completely digital the way that maybe some people would argue training might be going, or technical skills, if you will, technical skills training, if you will. I don't see either going all digital. I do see digital augmenting and enhancing your ability, Kevin, as a coach to bring people into, theory, principles, foundations, and then allowing you to kind of do the work at the point of impact, to be that text message, to be that kind of at the point of impact resource for folks where they're actually applying their knowledge.
Absolutely. And it takes me back to the word that I am running the risk of overusing in this conversation, which is the human layer. The hashtag that I added to the end of my email signature over the course of the past year is more human, right? Mm-hmm. Because that's the mission for me in the work I do. And I think for leaders in how they show up, for employees in how they show up at work. And, I've learned to kind of trust what pops into my head. And as we're talking about digital training, I for sure am an experiential learner, and I teach and practice martial arts as another layer of my many layered life. And I can record a video for you on how to throw the perfect roundhouse kick or hook kick or whatever, right? And you can watch that video 1,000 times until we get face to face and you have the human experience of throwing that kick. You're missing something, right? There's academic knowledge.
Yeah, for sure.
And then there's engaged experience.
Yeah. I appreciate that. And I think that begs the question, Kevin, as you look, 2, 3, 4 years out, if maybe the last few years we've blurred the lines between personal and professional development, where do we stand a couple years from now in terms of, my access to coaching resources, my demand or my agency in kind of curating that experience? What do you see as you look up and out in terms of your industry?
Yeah, I think it's a good time to be in this business. I think it's a growth industry. I think helping executives become humanistic leaders who create human-centric cultures of inspired, engaged, mission-aligned employees that net out in healthy, high-performance organizations is the future. I think that is where we are heading. I think it is becoming more and more evident that it's the only way to go, quite frankly, if you want results to sustain, if you want retention, right? There's a brilliant old saying, it's easier to retain than retrain, right? And, we're the phrase that gets bandied about on a daily basis in, HR executive and all of the trades is the Great Resignation, right? I don't think it's the Great Resignation. I think it's the Great Awakening. And I think it's a Great Awakening for employees that they can't compartmentalize who they are, that they have to show up as their whole selves. They have no choice. It's everywhere you are, there you are, right? And I think it's the Great Awakening by leaders that they have to recognize that and support that if they want healthy, high performance business results.
Yeah. And the evidence, the proof is in the pudding, right? We're seeing more and more organizations elevate leadership development, coaching, and learning development as cornerstones of their organization. We see more human capital leaders, talent management leaders, learning and development leaders at the C-suite table today than they ever have been. There was a real transition that happened over the last few years where organizations very quickly went to coaching and training as a way to establish continuity in organizations as kind of things were shifting over the last few years. And I think we're just starting to realize the benefits of maintaining that focus on developing these universal skills in employees. We're seeing employees become more agile within organizations. We're seeing employees double down on their own growth and development. And we're seeing people take way more charge of their direction. And that needs to be supported by great training and by great coaching. And Kevin, we just appreciate you being a part of this perspective. I absolutely appreciate kind of running alongside you as a fellow business owner and, somebody that also has kind of multiple interests outside of work. And I'm sorry we couldn't tap into the mountaineering aspect today, but I do know that that's something that you bring to your practitionership on a day-to-day basis. And we, on behalf of Thought Team, want to wish you luck in your endeavors. We know that you're going to climb that next peak and make it. But at the same time, I joked with you the last time we talked. I think you had just come back from your last excursion where you fell this close, right? This short of the peak. And I remember at the end of the conversation, I said, Kevin, am I the only one? And this is so horrible for me to say, but am I the only one that really appreciates that you didn't make it? Because I take solace in the fact that you're still in the process and that you haven't reached the peak. Like, I go to bed at night more confident and calm, knowing that Kevin Adler is still in the process and that he's not, basking in the sunlight of the peak. And I hope you don't take that the wrong way. But as one practitioner to the next, I love that about your leadership style.
The top of every mountain is the bottom of another.
Yeah.
There's always room to grow. So.
Absolutely. Awesome. All right. Are you down for a quick lightning round?
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. So we have not prepared Kevin with these questions, but we love these questions. And some of them are becoming mainstays every week. And we don't swap them because we just get incredibly different answers every time. So here we go. A couple of short questions for you, Kevin. What are you today reading, watching, or listening to?
Wow, that's a good question. I probably have 5 books going at the same time, some of which will be of no interest to most of the folks listening and watching. I don't think anybody on here is interested in training for the new alpinism. But I'm also in Atomic Habits at the moment. I'm also in a brilliant book called The Culture Fix. I'm also in, I'd have to open my Audible. I had everything growth oriented and everything about the human side of leadership and culture. I'll give 2 specific recommendations, please, that I have probably recommended 5 times in the past 48 hours. The Anatomy of Peace, which is one of the best business and leadership books I've ever read. Oh my gosh, what's the other one? I've just recommended it a couple times today already. I'll have to come back to it.
Yeah. The Anatomy of Peace. I haven't heard of that.
Oh, you must. You absolutely must.
I'll check it out.
Brilliant.
When you are at your desk at home, I'm assuming you have availability to a window. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. Window in your office, you're probably looking at it right now. When you are, in the middle of your flow and you stop and you gaze out of the window, what are you thinking about?
I would like to say that I'm just fully present. The reality is, if I pause to gaze out the window, I'm probably thinking about my next climb. That being said, there's something very interesting that has been happening for the past 3 days specifically. A yellow, I want to say finch, has been showing up on my window ledge directly where I work for the past 3 days. And it's kind of on my to-do list to look up the symbolism of what that means, because it's never happened before. And I'm intrigued. So
maybe that's the process showing up every day, reminding you to stay in it.
I suspect that's the case.
Kevin, would you travel to the past or the future, and why?
Wow. What a brilliant question. What a brilliant question. I think I would go to the past to whisper in my ear, trust yourself,
Mm.
you know? And I think I would go into the future to see how good a job I did at taking that advice.
I love that. Okay, sub question, because I'm super interested. If you travel into the past to tell your past self to trust yourself, and you only have one age to travel to, what age would that be to send that message
Man.
at its most critical point?
Oh, wow. That is a really powerful question. And I would tell you that that pattern has repeated itself a number of times in my life.
It's
The
a hard
need
one.
to just kind of trust. One of my discovery questions, which is a values mining process that I start every coaching engagement with, is what does your inner voice tell you that you are consistently ignoring, right? And so the
Yeah.
notion of tuning into what that inner wisdom says and every time I have ignored it, it has ultimately done what it set out to do in just a much more
Mhm.
painful and longer way, right? And so certainly, and it's cyclical, right? I mean, I think we grow and we learn, and then maybe we regress a little bit. There's this idea that growth is nonlinear, right? And so I think there was a time in sort of my developmental, tween years where I probably needed to hear that message. Absolutely at a certain point in college, absolutely at a certain point in my young to mid 20s, and then unquestionably at a certain point in my marriage,
Yeah.
and I think I'm doing a better job now than I ever have of
Yeah, well,
listening and
because
trusting.
you're able to tell yourself that authentically every day, and you're able to receive that message. It's interesting when I ask myself that question, I'm almost immediately met with what age uh, of Anthony would actually receive that message. And for me,
Yeah,
it
yeah,
probably wasn't until I was in my mid 30s that I would
yeah.
actually receive that message and put it to use.
I think that's a brilliant framework for it, because I have to be honest with you, any of those previous versions of me probably weren't ready to receive that message. I think I'm
Yeah,
uniquely capable now of trusting what my inner voice says based on
yeah,
everything that I've been through, right? And
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Well, I appreciate you thinking about it with very little preparation. Last question, Kevin. Think about something that you admire about yourself and fill in the blank. If the world were more like me, it would be what?
Um, Self-reliantly resilient, which is a big
Ooh,
chunky mouthful, but
I like that
um,
though.
I, yeah, I have developed the ability um, to seek out discomfort as a superpower. It's what allows me to, and it's a nice place to sort of wrap up, because it does allow me to pull mountaineering back in. What happens on a mountain, and the reason that it's not for everybody, but I wish everybody could experience it, is because what you learn from putting yourself in positions of extreme discomfort and persevering through them is how limitlessly resourceful and strong and resilient you actually are. And I have a good friend who is a billionaire with a B, and I am the least financially affluent of his friends. And I sat around a pool not that long ago with him and some very, very wealthy friends of his who all live very, very comfortable lives. And one of them was unable to wrap his head around the fact that I go sleep in a tent at 20,000 feet in the air in the dirt and do all the suffering that I do. And he said, I have a beautiful house. I got a country club, a very comfortable life. Why would I do that? And my answer to him was very simply, so that you know that you can, so that you know that, because I choose those mountains. I'm going to wrap here because this is as powerful a thing as I will say today. I choose those mountains and I choose that suffering. There will, for all of us, be mountains that are placed in our path that we don't choose and suffering that comes with it. And if you've never overcome one of those things before, then it's going to be a brand new experience for you. I know when I find myself in uncomfortable positions that I have overcome incredible discomfort. So I lean into that and I tap into what's in here. Everybody has it. I came back from a climb and I had a woman that I practice yoga with say to me, I could never do what you do. And I said, you absolutely can. You just haven't been tested the way I've been tested.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that is a good place to wrap. Kevin, we so appreciate your self-guided, self-induced resilience. More so, I appreciate your demonstration of it. And I also, and I'm sure those that work with you really appreciate the way that you incorporate that into how you influence others. Because at the end of the day, we do a lot of work on ourselves, but as coaches, we have the honor of being able to pour into others. And I just know that you're doing that on a day-to-day basis. And I just so respect the process that you're in. And I'm proud to be in it with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Privilege and pleasure.
All right. All right. As we wrap up, we want to thank Kevin for joining us on this incredible episode. We know that this will not be the last time for Kevin at the table. What an incredible leader and someone who just continues to evolve alongside his practitionership. We are live every Thursday afternoon at 3 p.m. with new practitioners. And next week, we will be joined by Sam Armies. He is the leader of the Florida Blockchain Association. And we've been having a lot of really great discussions about Web3 and how we can bring this discussion into our working environment and our working relationships as a way to kind of stretch our minds, see what is possible, and more importantly, understand what's coming. And so Sam will be joining us next week to talk all things Web3 and how we can apply that to our roles as leaders and as professionals. Thank you so much for joining. We want to thank everybody from YouTube, LinkedIn. I want to thank my team for tuning in each week and learning something new. And we just appreciate our community as it grows week over week. Have a wonderful rest of the week, a great holiday weekend, and we'll see you next Thursday.